Welcome to Arcane the Brewcast. I'm Jamie, your Arcane brewer.
I'm Jake, your Arcane engineer.
I'd like to thank Mom Rock for use of their song Conversation in the intro. Today, we're celebrating Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo is a Mexican holiday that's mostly popular in America, and no dish pairs better with this holiday than mole poblano, a dish that originated in the city of Puebla and associated with the victory that happened there in Cinco de Mayo, 1862. Mole poblano is a complex, savory sauce made with ancho peppers, cumin, sesame seeds, cloves, garlic, a little cinnamon, and chocolate. We're going to make a mole wine that captures all of those ingredients, and any one of them would be worthy of an episode's focus. But specifically, we're going to focus on the ingredient that makes mole different from any other sauce, the chocolate. Unfortunately, adding chocolate to a wine isn't as simple as melting down your favorite chocolate and pouring it right into the carboy. Chocolate contains dairy products, which you don't usually want in a wine, because they can potentially spoil. Yes, I realize I've broken that rule before, and I will break that rule again. But unless you have a plan for separating the milk solids out of the chocolate, it's not a good approach. So how should you add chocolate to your mead? Let's start by answering the question, what is chocolate?
We begin with the cacao tree, Theobroma cacao. The cacao tree originated from and was likely first domesticated in Ecuador, and mankind has been growing it for more than 5,000 years. The fruit of this tree comes in the form of the cacao pod. The pulp and seeds are removed from the cacao pods and gathered together in piles for several days. During this period, the mixture sweats as the pulp ferments and liquefies. The fermented pulp drips away and is either discarded or sometimes fermented further and then distilled into a liquor called sobeso. This sweating process is essential to remove the unpleasant, earthy bitterness from the cacao beans. Next, the beans are moved to ferment further. The beans are dried completely, ideally in the sun, and then are sorted to remove any beans unsuitable for production. Next, the beans are roasted to remove the last traces of moisture. This will make the husk easy to crack in the next step, as the beans are milled and then winnowed to blow the husk away from the inner kernel. Pieces of this kernel are called cacao nibs, and they're an ideal way to add chocolate flavor to a beer or wine. But so we understand a little better, let's follow along through the next few steps. The cacao nibs are ground into a cocoa paste, also known as chocolate liquor. This grinding process releases some of the oils, the cocoa butter. In the broma process, bags of cocoa paste are hung up on hooks in a room slightly above the melting point of cocoa butter, and the oils drip out, leaving the cocoa solids behind. These cocoa solids are also known as cocoa powder. To make Dutch processed cocoa powder, the cocoa solids are then treated with an alkalizing agent like potassium carbonate to remove the acidity and make the color a more appealing shade of brown. There's more steps to producing the chocolate we know and love, but we already have everything we need to add it to our wine. Let's take our cacao nibs and cocoa powder and figure out what to do with them.
So the biggest difference between cacao nibs and cocoa powder is that cacao nibs have not been ground up and had the cocoa butter extracted from them. I prefer cacao nibs. They bring a richer chocolate flavor, in my opinion, than cocoa powder. Cacao nibs are best added to a beer or wine after fermentation at a rate between 1 and 4 ounces per gallon, depending on how intense you want the chocolate flavor to be. I tend to err on the side of overkill. The nibs can be sanitized with a minute-long Dunkin' sanitizer or whiskey to kill any remaining bacteria. For whiskey, because then you get a few ounces of chocolatey whiskey to sip on. That's nice. If you are worried about the oils in cacao nibs, the first and most accessible solution is cocoa powder. When adding cocoa powder to a beer, many choose to add it to the end of the boil to ensure that it's sanitary. High levels of cocoa powder may also bring a chalky mouthfeel. Cacao nibs or cocoa powder are great ways to add chocolate flavor to your beverage, but when you want to add more aroma, I recommend you turn to extract. There are a lot of chocolate extracts on the market, some with more fakey chocolate flavors than others. You want to use a very light hand when adding extract, but even just a little can go a long way to making the chocolate flavors you've already added with nibs and the cocoa powder much more perceptible to the palate. I found that I tend to like the Brewer's Best line of flavor extracts, but there are a lot of other good ones like Amaretti, Torani, or Lorraine oils. Do some research on the extract you intend to buy, and start with a small addition and then try it before adding more. You can always add more, you can never take any out. There's one more option for adding chocolate. cholacca. Cholacca is an emulsified form of liquid cacao made from nibs, water, and a little coconut sugar. The main benefit of cholacca is that it brings all the flavor of cacao nibs, but it's easy to add, and you can add it directly to the product in the state the manufacturer provides it in. Some find that cholacca brings a stronger chocolate flavor than cacao nibs, and we put some in an orange blossom mead to see how we like it. If you recall, we gelatin-fined that mead just a couple of episodes ago. To see how much of the chocolate flavor will get wiped out by the process, we're also going to filter it.
We're going to be transferring the contents of this keg into this keg, and we're going to try to introduce as little oxygen as possible. First, we're going to put some gas in the empty keg. We'll purge the air a couple times to get rid of the oxygen. Then we're going to repressurize this keg to make sure it's ready to go. Hook them up through the filter, back down the beer line over here. So I just whipped up a quick batch of Star San. Always label your bottles, good in any environment. I just pressurized this guy and I'm gonna spray the post and the lid and the areas around it with Star San. If there's a leak, you should see the bubbles form. I don't see any, so I think we're good. Alright, we're gonna try to get the oxygen out of this filter housing by pushing through some CO2 from the empty keg. There's a pressure release valve here that can use to purge the air. Not all models come with that, in which case you can just kind of press in on the other fitting, which you probably want to do anyway to get the air out of the hose. You can see there's a little bit of Star San from this keg moving through the line. It's not enough that I'm worried about it. I am gonna re-sanitize this though, since I just stuck my finger in there. Alright, we're gonna take our pressure off this vessel, move it over to this vessel that currently is full of beer. Mead, rather. Release a little pressure here. Hook this up. And hope for the best. Once this outside fills up, it'll push the mead through the filter housing, and then there's a chamber in the center. That'll come out, go out here, into this keg down the dip tube. And we can control how quickly it's flowing by controlling the pressure being released on the receiving keg.
Is that because of like the pressure differential between the
Yep.
Nice.
We got high pressure on the source keg, low pressure on the receiving keg. Naturally wants to push out, move over there. No way to get there except through the filter.
And that forces it through the filter and leaves all that other stuff behind that you can see there. The last of the chocolate debris.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. That's what you like to see.
CO2 is filling the top of the filter housing, pushing the mead to the bottom and through the filter. At a certain point, it'll be easier for the CO2 to go through the filter than to push the mead down further, so it may not get everything in the housing. Now, I don't know if turning this upside down will do anything, but let's find out.
Yeah. I mean, it did something.
Yeah, I don't know if it did anything useful.
It made it sputter for a little bit. There's definitely less liquid in there than there was before.
Yeah, actually...
Oh yeah, it's flushing out.
Go. You gotta release the pressure on the receiving keg. I'd say we're done.
To make our mole wine, we're going to use a red wine I started about a year ago. I made 5 gallons each of Chilean Carmenere and Syrah grape juices, then blended them together after fermentation with chalaca. It rested on the chalaca for a few months, and then I added gelatin to clean it up a little. We're going to use a gallon of this for our mole wine. Mole has a lot of ingredients, and since I can't get all of them independently, I'm going to be using this mole paste. It's pretty oily, but I'm not worried about it. Right now the wine is too dry, so it's going to need a little back sweetening. I'm going to make a pepper syrup. I have ancho peppers, which are the dried form of poblanos. They don't have very much spice, so we're leaving all the seeds in. The ancho will hopefully increase the overall pepperiness of the wine, so we'll be able to hold up to all the chocolate flavor we've added with the chalaca. We'll be using 1/2 cup of raw agave syrup, mixed with a 1/2 cup of water. We heat it up in a saucepan. Once it's simmering, we add our ancho peppers and let it reduce until it's more or less back down to a 1/2 cup. Then it's time to mix up our wine while it cools. I measure out about 1 quart of wine to mix with the mole spices, then pour that blend into the carboy and top it the rest of the way off. We'll add our ancho agave syrup now, and then I'm going to try and mix this wine up a little. This is called a stir plate. You use it to stir things, but mostly you use it to make yeast starters. This time, I'm using it to stir the mole spices up a little, since they're already dropping back out. You generally don't want to shake up wine too much because it'll force oxygen into the solution, so I'm gonna try for a gentle stir. Nevertheless, this could decrease the overall lifespan of the wine. Pretty soon, a layer of oil shows up on top. I take some out with a pipette with the intention of skimming it all off the top, but after tasting it, I find it's not just oil and it contains a lot of chocolate and spice. Oil will always separate out of your solution unless you turn it into an emulsion. We're going to do precisely that, using soy lecithin. I stir it up again, and while the spices still drop out quickly, this time the oil does not separate. Our wine will also be permanently murky now, but that's fine. Not every wine has to be beautiful to be delicious. The spices have transferred enough of that flavor into the wine by now, so we'll pour the wine off of them and into another vessel. A little bit of liquid is left behind so we can mix it up with the spice and pour it off into the saucepan to make an actual mole sauce. I've got some rice in the rice cooker with some cayenne peppers we grow, and I've got some chicken that I've breaded and frozen ahead of time to fry up whenever I want. I also add some extra spices to the mole sauce to balance out all that red wine. Some more cayenne and chili pepper, a dash of garlic, and a lot more salt. And I'm adding a scoop of homemade onion jelly to sweeten it up a little. We don't have any sesame seeds on hand, so we use some everything bagels instead. This looks delicious. Time to serve it and try some of that mole wine. So we're back with our mole poblano. We simmered what was left of the wine and spice down until we had our sauce. We're gonna give that a try. We also have our mole wine right here. I guess we've got to have the mole poblano first to know if this tastes like mole, right?
I suppose.
Yeah. Just give that a try. A lot of red wine is coming through. It's got some good spice to it. Good chocolate. It's kind of building on me a little. Okay, I think I'll have to try the wine before this heat becomes too much.
Yeah.
Woo!
It does build on you.
It really does. So here's some of the Coco de Mayo, our mole wine.
It's chocolatey.
It's definitely got the chocolate.
It's hard to taste any of the spices because my mouth is already saturated with the exact same spices.
Yeah, I think we actually need like a palate cleanser or something. It tastes delicious and I taste spice, but I can't be sure how much of it was from the mole I just ate.
It's good though.
It is good. Whew. It's got plenty of spice on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all the spices that I taste reflected in the dish. I think partly they're going to taste similar because this is literally a reduction of that. And so there's a lot of grape wine in this mole sauce.
It captures the essence, but I don't know if it pairs with it. It's just...
No, because it's spice on spice.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you want to pair anything with a mole poblano, it should probably be a delicious, crisp Mexican lager.
Or milk.
Or milk. Yeah, I guess milk. Well, thank you to Mom Rock for the use of their song Conversation.
Like, comment, and subscribe. Got an idea for a future episode? Leave it in the comments, and we will do our best to get to it.
I guess I should eat this now that we got the milk.
Yeah.
Chocolatey.
Happening now, thousands flooding downtown Tulsa, celebrating Cinco de Mayo. Restaurants are packed while police and security make sure everyone makes it home safe.